Very good morning to all of you. Today I'm going to present on health financing model in India, a universal health coverage perspective. I would like to begin with a quote. Healthcare lies at a confluence of inelastic demand, political sensitivity, economic consequences, and ethical governance that make the state so crucial. Alongside an increase in the quantum of funding, there is a need to improve the policy design and quality of spending to ensure closer alignment with health outcomes. Some of these important concepts that are mentioned in this quote, one by one, I'm going to take them and we'll discuss. At the end of the presentation, we'll again come to this quote and probably we'll try and conclude. So the definition, first of all, the definition of UHC, although we all know all this, but it is about equity in access to health services. Quality of health services should be good enough to improve the health of those receiving services, and people should be protected against the financial risks so that they do not ruin their financial condition because they have to seek health services. So affordable access to healthcare services is ensured to all. That is the essence of UHC. Now, some of the key facts are that at least half of the world's population still do not have full coverage to essential health services. About 100 million people are still being pushed into extreme poverty because they have to purchase health services. Over 800 million people spend at least 10% of their budgets to pay for healthcare. So the catastrophic effect of healthcare on an individual is all over the world, not just our country, is very much clear from this statistic that we have just discussed. Now, how do we do health financing? I will just very briefly discuss the popular models of health financing. The first one is the leverage model. This is financing of health services through taxes, which means you pay the taxes and the government will take care of your healthcare through infrastructure or through the various ways in which insurance is provided. So the individual doesn't have to bother about financing, about purchasing health services. The health services are provided as a public good. The second model is the Bismarck model, where health financing is done through a risk pool, which we know better as insurance, where the insurer does not make a profit, which means these are corporations or small risk pools that are available at the community level. And this risk pool is basically used, which is a pool of money that is contributed by the community, and this pool is used to finance for healthcare services to be provided to the community. Then you have national health insurance model, where a government-run insurance program, which will be financed through public expenditure, which means that you pay your taxes, the government will provide a blanket insurance scheme to all the people in the country, and that is how the health financing will be done. Then there are hybrid model where, in one country, all the three models that we have discussed, they are prevalent simultaneously. And most of the less developed countries have all these models prevalent at the same time in their country. But it is interesting to see that the United States is also one of the countries that has a hybrid model where leverage is for veterans and Bismarck is for workforce, and there are people at the vulnerable, at the lower levels, which are left to pay for out of pocket. So the last is out of pocket expenditure, which means none of these models are prevalent that we have discussed. People have to pay for their own, health, and people have to spend money. If they fall sick, they have to spend money, purchase the services of the healthcare provider. And which could be very pinching because the cost of healthcare around the world, the modern healthcare around the world is not very low. And but since there is an inelastic demand for health, which means that if you get sick, you have to purchase healthcare services. So that is one expenditure that is, nobody, there would be very few lucky people who would keep an extraordinary health all through their life. But one has to incur this kind of expenditure out of pocket at some point of time in life, and that should take over a lot of their funds. Some facts about India. Public spending, like until last year, was about hovering around 1.1% of GDP. 32 million people are pushed into poverty every year, and 22 million of those are rural poor. A fifth of the ill in both urban and rural areas deny themselves treatment. 3.5% of India's population becomes impoverished, and 5% face catastrophic expenditures. Only 44% of the people in India have health insurance. 56% of the people are uninsured. This is the 2018 data that I have. I don't have the aggregate statistic after Ayushman Bharat. 2018 was just about the time that this scheme was launched. Across all these states, the proportion of households with health insurance increased by 54% for the states that implemented PMJY. This is the statistic that I am quoting from this year's economic survey. So we can say that probably some percentage over there, like 44%, might have increased to some 50, 60, 65% after the launch of Ayushman Bharat. But still, there is a big proportion of population which is still uninsured. Health financing in India is largely private, which means people have to bear the cost of healthcare on their own. According to National Health Accounts estimates, public spending is 28.06% and household spending is 67.74% on healthcare. Medicines, diagnostics, and ambulatory care accounts for 70% of this expenditure. 13.68% of households face catastrophic expenditures. Poor households finance catastrophic expenditures by borrowing. And at 24 to 60% rate of interest, which is a very high rate of interest, that pushes them into intergenerational poverty. So, all these figures and the earlier figures that I was quoting, I've taken all these from different studies. And this is the condition. So, it is important for a country like India to generate a viable health financing option, so that the people we were forced to be pushed into poverty, we can actually promise them a good quality of life. So can we do something about it? Yes, the remedy is also very simple. Simple in the sense that if all outpatient treatment, OPD expenditure will be provided for free, only 0.05% will sink into poverty. If inpatient treatment, IPD, is covered in the insurance, 32% of out-of-pocket expenditures can be reduced. So we can say that you have to provide OPD, you have to provide IPD, and this is the statistic that is there in front of us. Again, this is from some studies. So does that look simple? Because health is one of the most important aspects of life, this should look simple. That why are we not having a system where we can provide people OPD and IPD services? If this is so easy, if it is so easy to reduce out-of-pocket expenditures, why are we not doing that? Are we a really poor country that we cannot provide for people? Or do we lack funds, or we lack the willpower, or we lack the infrastructure? Is there a lack of workforce? We have to see. So our health financing system as of now is regressive and inequitable, as it was discussed earlier. It is an open, unregulated marketplace where individuals pay in accordance with their financial capacity and providers charge in accordance with their choice. So government allocations remain stagnant for many years. There is some movement last 2-3 years, but otherwise for many years the government allocations were just the same. Now, these are some of the heads. Like if I'm talking about public expenditure, basically public expenditure is done by NHM. A large part of it is NHM. Then you have Department of Health and Family Welfare, which is doing some amount of public expenditure. Of course, NHM I've taken it separately. Then you have AIDS Control Society. Some funds are dedicated to that. Department of Ayush and Department of Health Research. So these are some of the old figures. The National Health Account, some special report had come, and from there I got these figures. But this is how it is broken up. The public expenditure allocations are broken up like that. Now, if we look at the Government of India allocations for NHM between from 13-14 to 18-19, you will find that the allocations fall by 2% from 17-18 to 18-19. And why is this happening? I will discuss later. But Ministry of Health and Finance allocations and then NHM allocations, these are given over here, and you can see that there is some like rise and fall, some rise one odd year and then fall again. So this was the condition up till 2018. Some more facts. A part of allocations for healthcare largely remain unutilized year after year. One of the reasons why we saw that kind of rise in, that kind of uneven trend as far as health allocation was concerned is that a large part of allocations are unutilized year after year. India is a generic powerhouse of the world and big enough to attain scale economies in diagnostics. These are two of the very critical points, that we are a generic powerhouse of the world, which means we have the capacity to bring down the prices for the medicine, which accounts for one of the major pillars of out-of-pocket expenditures. Then we are very big to attain scale economies in diagnostics. So if we have large-scale labs, then our per unit cost of diagnostic tests would be very, very minimum. Probably we can generate some very good examples of scale economies over here. A large part of health expenditure is in the curative care. There is a curative bias to health expenditures, public health expenditures. That is a trend all around the world. I mean, in India also this is a trend, and we do not have preventive care. There is a normative gap of some 3469 community health centers for a population of 0.1 million, primary health centers, and then sub-centers. There is a gap of number of doctors, nurses, paramedics, and frontline health workers. So we have a normative gap in infrastructure. We also have gaps in the health workforce, and this is based on WHO data. Now, a simple solution to increase public expenditure in healthcare, because we were because of the huge out-of-pocket expenditure that was done by Indians all this while, and health is one of the SDG goals. So there was a lot of pressure on our government to increase public health expenditure in healthcare. So we thought that if money has to be spent by the government, why not giving it in the hands of the people? Because they purchase health services, so let us give it in their hands, and so that they can spend this money for the betterment of their health. Finance it with an increase of 1% in the special health cess or tax. So how do you finance that increase in expenditure? You impose a flat health cess, and then all health indicators. An assumption was made that all health indicators would improve. So thus Ayushman Bharat was born. So the point that I want to make here is that we discuss Ayushman Bharat and the achievements of Ayushman Bharat later. The point that I want to make here is that it was launched in a hurry, and there was again a very simplistic thinking that went into the launch of Ayushman Bharat. Now, Pradhan Mantri Jan Arogya Yojana, Ayushman Bharat. This scheme aims to provide a coverage of, I think read this, everybody knows about this scheme. The union government is providing 60% funds, and then the state government, because they are expected to create a pool, and then insurance schemes the various insurance schemes before PMJAY, they would all be merged into one scheme, and that will be provided for all. So, historically, what were the problems with the government-sponsored insurance schemes? RSPY, several studies have suggested that RSPY had misfired in targeting, covering only 12.7% of households. right? And while the scheme increased the number of admissions, it failed to significantly impact OP expenditure. A lot of our out-of-pocket expenditure goes into, the OPD and the general surgery procedures and all those things. So this scheme was not able to address that. At both the central and state levels, governments have lacked the capacity to regulate RSPY. RSPY providers insurance find it more profitable to insure households which have less than 5 members, which is mandated because the premiums are low. So there is this math that works around this. That was found in studies that a household which has lesser number of members, it would be better to insure them. Issue the registration card halfway through the year, so that half the year has already gone, so probably there will be lesser number of claims. Effective targeting has not been a priority. Targeting the right person, the most vulnerable person, that is not done. Doctors and hospitals recommend unnecessary procedures. So these are some of the pitfalls of insurance schemes, government-sponsored insurance schemes that were launched in the country. And now this is in the background of what we've discussed about the government-sponsored insurance scheme. This is a figure that I've taken from this year's survey, economic survey. So if you see the utilization of Ayushman Bharat insurance scheme has been largely for general surgery, obs-gynae, and this is a long-tailed curve which is peaking at the expenditure of 10 to 15,000, and then it comes down, and the costlier procedures are generally not claimed by the users of PMJAY. So this is something that is coming directly from the government document. Now, some fallouts of PMJAY. Putting too much money in insurance results in wide gaps in government infrastructure will transfer committed funds to private sector every year. This is one of the biggest criticism of PMJAY that people are talking about. Capital expenditure on health will get a boost in the private sector, but it will also give rise to cost of care. Very strict regulations and constant negotiations with the private sector to bring down the cost will put the public-private machinery work. Otherwise, it will give rise to various unethical practices. So, constant negotiations have to be done between the government and the private providers to keep the costs within packages that are offered. And if those negotiations are not made and the talks are not generated every year, then probably, either these schemes will remain unutilized or lots of unethical practices will give rise to these kind of practices. And privatization of a basic service like healthcare brings unique inequities like it is in the US. Those who can pay can have a better access to health. This is a general criticism of, privatization of health services. So we have adopted a public-private model where we have health services being provided by the public provider as well as the private provider. So this entire public-private balance that is being created, it has its own pitfalls. Now, universal health coverage. What are the health outcomes that we want to achieve? It is not rocket science to figure that out. We want every citizen of India to have access to health and not merely an access to cure. Health outcomes are achieved not just by curative care, but by many other factors too. Curative care providers worldwide have a strong lobby and great negotiating powers. Healthy environment, adequate nutrition, gender equality, low stress in society, road safety, absence of extreme poverty conditions, and healthy lifestyles. These are some of the ways that ensure a better health of the citizens in a country. Hospitals and insurance, unfortunately, do not cover any of this. The points that are mentioned what has been mentioned in the last point. Where are we spending? Health expenditure comprises of revenue and capital expenditures. Traditionally, capital expenditures has been low. It was an average of about 10%. Studies have shown that a large part of growing revenue expenditure is on one hand, which is salaries of the doctors and other health workforce. So we are not making too much of capital expenditure. We are largely spending on running the existing system. Where should we spend? Infrastructure, hospitals, equipment, technology, primary health, nutrition, preventive and supportive care, health education and research, medical and public health, health MIS, publicly operated, not-for-profit insurance, free drugs and diagnostics, and public health workforce. So these are the areas where we need to spend if we have to increase the public health expenditure. But we'll discuss very shortly that some of these areas are covered, but very few of these areas are covered actually. An increased expenditure has largely gone into one or two areas, and many of these areas are actually left untouched. So these are Ministry of Health expenditure. This is from this is an older statistic. If you look at it, this is family welfare is not included over here. It is just Ministry of Health expenditure figures. So you find that public health expenditures have been 12% to 13%. And generally, the expenditure of Ministry of Health is going into allopathic system of medicine and other systems of medicine. And general expenditure, there is some small amount of general expenditure. So this is how the breakup of Ministry of Health expenditures happen. Now, how much money do we need in order to have a decent, healthcare system in our country? And when we move some steps towards, you will see doubling the public health expenditure as a percent of GDP, or taking it to 2.5% of GDP as per health policy. Health policy gave us a guidance of increasing it to 2.5% of GDP. That would mean that 1,10,000 crores additional should be spent by the government. States need to treble their current level of spending from 3% to 9%. Now, every rupee spent on health has an opportunity cost in a developing country, because government funds have to be spent on health and education. These are two of the strongest pillar of human development. But then there are other competing sectors in the economy, like infrastructure, where some of these resources have to be spent, because this is a developing economy. Where do we get the money from for increased public health expenditure? From increased taxation, CSR expenditure, charity, risk pool, funds, and households. These are the sources of funds for the increased, like if we at all want to increase it from 1.1% to 2.5%, or later in the time some 5%, this is where the money is going to be raised from. So let us come to this year's budgetary announcements. So our finance minister allocated a budget of 2,23,846 crore in 2021-22 as against the 94,452 crores, which is a clear-cut 137% increase. And but there is a very big COVID bill over here, because COVID, the pandemic and the vaccination, the treatment of the pandemic, and all the other infrastructural facilities that have been created for the pandemic, that needs to be financed. So some 35,000 crores get into vaccines alone. I'll give you the figures later, the breakup. 2.23 lakh crore outlay for health and well-being will include expenditure on 6 components. Department of Health and Family Welfare will get a 31.83%. Finance Commission grants, there have been FC grants that have been offered in 2 areas, that will be about 5.89%. Department of Drinking Water and Sanitation, 26.81%. Another FC grant for, one is for research. So 16.09% is the second FC grant, and vaccination is 15.63%. Health research 1.89%, and Ayush 1.32%. Nutrition 1.20%. So 64 84,180 crores have been allocated in a new scheme, which is PM Atmanirbhar Swasth Bharat Yojana, with an outlay of 6 years. This will be like distributed for the next 6 years, and this would imply that each year an additional 10,000 crores would be pumped into the health sector. So, is this visible? This table that I'm producing over here, it is a summary of what we were discussing in the previous slide, and the entire expenditure of 2,23,846 crore has been broken up into different heads. So FC grant for water and sanitation, FC grant for health, nutrition. So budgeted estimate for 2021 and budgeted estimate for 21-22, you will find that there has been a decrease in nutrition, and drinking water and sanitation has got a very high, has got a substantial increase, and there is a bill of course, COVID vaccination. So where does this increased amount go? Some of the announcements that is support from for 17,788 rural and urban health and wellness centers. Integrated public health labs. This is a welcome, very welcome step, because public health labs created in all districts and blocks. Establishing critical care hospital blocks in 602 districts and 12 central institutions. Strengthening of NCDC, National Disease Control. It's 5 regional branches and 20 metropolitan health surveillance units. Expansion of integrated health information portal, that is what National Digital Health Mission. Operationalization of public health units at ports and land crossings. Setting up of 15 health emergency operation centers. These are generally related to COVID. And setting up of a national institution for One Health biosafety level 3 laboratories and 4 regional national institutions. So something on quality and virology. So these are the new steps that have been taken. Although we do not have details of any of these, but these are the announcements that are being made. So this additional expenditure that you find here in health and family welfare, and then research, water and sanitation, some of the announcements are here, some of the details are here. Now, this is a story that was sold to us by Economic Survey of this year. And this says that as public health expenditure increases, the out-of-pocket expenditures, they go down. And this is a trend line that has been, developed. And if you can see, this is a curve that is, downward sloping. So, which means increased public health expenditure is substantially bringing OP down. And India is at a very place with very little public expenditure and very high OP. So, based on this theoretical premise, Economic Survey 2021 has given us, for the first time, I'm very happy to see that Economic Survey talked about some of the pitfalls of healthcare in this country, which have a very clear-cut, implication on how health financing is done in this country. So, survey talks about uncertainty, variability of demand, which is inelastic, particularly for emergency care. And survey also talks about information asymmetry. Information asymmetry is the definition of information asymmetry is that one party to an economic transition possesses greater knowledge than the other party. And the party which has better knowledge would be at a better negotiation speed. So there is an information asymmetry related to care, related to medicine, related to insurance, and related to quality of product and service. And this is one of the factors that doesn't, that actually hampers the market forces to function in this particular sector to bring about allocational efficiency. So this is one of the unique, unique factor about the Indian healthcare market, and survey is written about it. There's a huge unregulated private sector. and hyperbolic tendencies that people unusually tend to engage in risky behaviors like smoking and other things, and that's how this market is functioning. So some of the factors of Indian healthcare market forces, important factors that determine the interplay of demand and supply in the Indian healthcare market have been explained by economic survey. So this talks about problems related to hyperbolic tendencies, related to unregulated private sector and information asymmetry. Information asymmetry is actually a very dignified word for telling us that, related to insurance, the empanelments that are done, they are not transparent. The doctor that is prescribing the medicine is not, he is purposefully prescribing a branded medicine instead of generic medicine. The information related to cure is not. Nobody can question a doctor about the quality of the service that one is receiving. So all about that. Now, while we talk about health financing in the country, let us also talk about some misutilization of funds. That is because we can talk about increase in public health expenditure, but there are some, the healthcare sector is not one of the most efficient sectors in this country. So there is misutilization of funds. Government hospitals are poorly managed. The striking example is the military hospitals, which are far more efficient. So I think I'll do this quickly. Second, misutilization funds is use of technology. So technical solutions for health are developed in such a way that they require high capital investment and push the user into a trap of updating latest technology at a higher cost. So this is like this problem is not pertaining to our own country. This is a worldwide problem. That healthcare technology costs are increasing with every new innovation, which doesn't happen in other sectors. Like when new innovation happens, costs generally go down. But healthcare, this is the reverse that is happening, and because of that, we actually have to fall into a trap of having to purchase technology at higher prices year after year. So how do you handle that? Is through health technology assessment, which is a very important area. So in a resource-constrained economy, costly options for technology are very, very pinching. Now, one option is this is one of the models that is available elsewhere in the world. For-profit insurance. Now, for-profit insurance industry, this is a figure that I am giving from American industry. I do not have the figure for the Indian industry, health insurance industry. But this is saying that insurance companies usually function on a profit margin of some 4 to 5%. Now, I'm not saying that having a profit is not one of the is not a good thing. No, probably having a profit just tells us that the way probably the industry is an efficient industry because they're having some sort of a profit margin. Suppose this entire for-profit insurance is, the point that I want to make is that not-for-profit insurance in a country like India would save this 4 to 5% of public money, and this is one of the models that we may wish to experiment. So from for-profit to not-for-profit insurance. Now, is there an efficient fund utilization model? Some government initiatives. In July 18, NITI Aayog issued a document called National Health Tech, which is towards National Digital Health Mission. This has been discussed earlier in the NPP, so I won't go. But a strong and resilient digital backbone to the health system will bring transparency and will enable the process of shifting from illness-focused to wellness-oriented approach and ensure cost-effective healthcare. So, in order to bring down costs, the National Digital Health Mission or digital technology that can play an important role. It itself is a very detailed topic, so I won't go much into it, but this is the idea. Now, implications of digital health, I think this was discussed earlier also, or maybe we can discuss it later, but health and wellness center, which is a pivotal point for primary healthcare, The idea is to get this digitally enabled, and in terms of scale economies, there is an announcement that health and wellness centers will be directly connected to public health labs, and the data of from these centers will go to the public health labs, and that will generate scale economies in terms of service models that we develop in the future in this country. So health financing and UHC, how do we provide for universal health care in this country, considering the various constraints that we have in this utilization of funds that we have, and the amount of money that is available to us? The final take, government should increase capital expenditure and create infrastructure from the taxpayers' funds. Government should increase its expenditure in preventive and promotive methods, as curative care would tackle just one part of the problem, and preventive care solutions are much more sustainable and cost-effective. Health insurance should be publicly provided and should be made a not-for-profit sector. Privatization of healthcare is not desirable. Private investment has a greater capital cost. Now, this is a very debatable thing, but balancing public and private sector would take over a lot of our energy. So we will have to think about it. I'm not saying eliminate private sector. It's not possible to eliminate private sector, but endorsing it by providing government-sponsored insurance, one has to think about it. Cost-effective free drugs and diagnostic models should be developed. Management of government hospitals should be improved. It should get back to the good old days of government service providers. Make judicious use of technology to leapfrog to advanced care models. First step would be to have a robust MIS. Let the citizens pay their taxes and enjoy an equitable, universal, basic health for all. So, it is a long way, but some steps have already been taken. Theoretically, we have discussed some of these measures, and some steps have already been taken, some steps have yet to be taken. And but this is how I would like to sum up. So tax this is a suggestion that we have a special health tax of 5% and everybody has to pay for it. And then we have a national insurance scheme for everyone, like a blanket insurance scheme that is provided to every citizen of the country, and you pay a 5% health tax. Probably that could work. US spends 18.5% of GDP on health, and nearly half of it is public health expenditure. So we are a less developed country, we have to spend on so many other things, but then it should be increased in a phased manner. Western Europe has government revenues at 45 to 50% of national income, US and Japan 30 to 35%. Sub-Saharan Africa and South Asia, especially India, has government revenues at about 10% of GDP. So this is a figure that I got from a book called Capital by Thomas Piketty. And so government revenues, which means the government, the amount of money that government collects as taxes. So, if you look at developed countries, although we have an impression that probably they have a huge private sector and everything is, government collects a lot of money in taxes. And in the less developed countries, it is 10%. In developed countries, it is 45 to 50%. Western Europe, US, and Japan is 30 to 35%. So, state is functioning. The functioning of state is much more wide in developed economies and lesser in less developed economies. So, special health tax for if health tax is increased a little bit, and that looks like a workable model. There are these two quotes that I would like to share. Chronic underfunding of health is not accidental, but a result of a development model adopted early on. So this has got to do with the Raj that we had to come out. We had to come out of. And the kind of system we adopted. And in all the developed countries in the world today, building a fiscal and social state has been an essential part of the process. and economic development. The historical evidence suggests that only 10 to 15% of tax receipts, it was possible for a state to fulfill much more than traditional Hegelian responsibilities. That's what I'm talking about. That 10 to 15% of tax receipts, we can't do much. So this entire COVID pandemic has given us an opportunity. Like if you are able to sustain to the 9.5% fiscal deficit where the government spending has been brought down, able to manage the economy, that gives us a clear-cut indication that we might as well increase our taxes and let the public spending be vibrant. So again, this quote, this is a quote that is derived from a book from K. Sujata Rao, To Be Care. And this quote pretty much sums up the entire, sad facts of our healthcare system. And some of these are underlined. I think I'll end over here. Maybe you can ponder. Thank you.